I stepped out of the taxi and smoothed the front of my dress blues, feeling the weight of the medals on my chest more than usual. 6 months in a high-security deployment zone had hardened my instincts, but nothing prepared me for what I saw next. The only thing that kept me upright was the quiet relief of finally being home, standing on my own lawn, ready to sleep in my own bed. That feeling vanished the moment I lifted my eyes and saw the sign planted dead center in my yard. Sold. Bold red letters, freshly staked into the grass I had mowed myself before leaving. Behind it, 2 men in stained coveralls were hauling everything I owned out of my front door. My books, my framed commendations, my uniforms, my clothes, my furniture, my life. They were tossing it all into a dumpster like it was trash. Standing on my porch, watching calmly with beers in their hands, were my father Richard and my younger brother Caleb. Richard did not smile. He did not wave. He simply pointed lazily at the dumpster and said I did not live here anymore. He said they cashed out. Before I tell you what I found in that dumpster and the secret document that nearly destroyed their entire celebration, drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. I did not run. I did not scream. I adjusted the strap of my bag and started walking up the driveway, my boots crunching against the gravel with a rhythm I had perfected through over a decade of military service. My name is Jordan and I am 29 years old. In my line of work, high-level logistics and intelligence for special operations, you learn quickly that the loudest person in the room is usually the most vulnerable. Panic is a luxury I could not afford overseas, and I certainly was not about to waste it on these two. As I closed the distance between us, I saw Richard's eyes flicker. He expected tears. He expected rage. He expected the hysterical daughter he could manipulate, shame, and gaslight into submission. Instead, he got nothing. I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps and looked up at them. The height difference was designed to make me feel small, but I had never felt taller. Caleb got into trouble, Richard said, taking a long drink from his beer as if he were casually discussing a fender bender. He owes the wrong people a lot of money. $120,000 to be exact. We had to act fast. I repeated calmly. I do not remember being part of the we that decided to liquidate my assets. Family sacrifices for family, Jordan, he snapped. The manipulation rolled off his tongue like scripture. You were single. You live in barracks half the time anyway. You do not need a house. Your brother needed a lifeline. I looked at the house behind him and memories flooded back instantly. I remembered the day I bought it. I was 22 years old, fresh off my first combat tour, clutching a check made up of hazard pay and sleepless nights. That house was not just wood, drywall, and concrete. It was the only place on earth where I did not have to watch my back. I renovated it myself. I sanded the floors until my fingers bled. I painted the walls a soft gray that finally quieted the noise in my head. I remembered Richard standing in this exact spot back then, telling me I was selfish for buying property when Caleb was struggling to make rent. They tried to make me feel guilty for stability then. Now they were punishing me for having it. But they made one fatal error in their assessment. They thought they had stripped me of my armor. They did not realize the house was just a building. The fortress was inside me, and they could not touch that. You used the power of attorney, I said. It was not a question. You signed it, Caleb chimed in. Smirking, he lifted his wrist and checked the time, and the sunlight caught the heavy gold face of a brand new Rolex. Flashy, expensive, bought with a deposit from my sanctuary. It was legal, sis. Dad saved my life. You should be happy you could help. He did not look saved. He looked well-fed, smug, and arrogant. A parasite who had finally consumed enough of the host to feel powerful. I signed a power of attorney for medical decisions, I said, locking my eyes on his watch. In case I came back in a box. Not so you could loot my life while I was still breathing. It is done, Richard said, waving his hand dismissively. The buyer is signing final paperwork in 10 minutes. The money for the loan sharks is already wired. You can stay at the motel by the highway until you redeploy. It is not a big deal. That was the moment the last thread of attachment snapped. It was not just theft. It was erasure. To them, I was not a person with rights, dreams, or a future. I was a resource, an asset to be liquidated to cover someone else's mistakes. They had not just sold my house. They had sold me. Is the buyer here? I asked. She is inside doing a final walkthrough, Richard said. Do not you dare make a scene. She paid cash. We need this deal to close. I smiled. It was cold and sharp, the kind of smile I normally reserved for enemy combatants. I would not dream of making a scene, I said, stepping onto the porch. I just want to meet the new owner. The door opened before I could knock. A woman in a beige pantsuit stepped outside. Her posture, manicure, and expression told me everything I needed to know. She was not a family buying their first home. She was an investor, someone who scanned rooms for profit margins instead of warmth. She held the deed in her hand like a weapon. You must be the daughter, she said dismissively. Your father told me you might stop by. Look, honey, it is done. The papers are signed. The money is transferred. I need you off my property before I call the cops. I glanced past her. Richard was standing at the kitchen island holding a bank receipt with trembling hands. His face was flushed with the high of dodging disaster. When he saw me through the open door, he grinned wide, triumphant, proud of what he thought was the heist of the century. It is over, Jordan, he called out, waving the receipt. 120,000 wired straight to the loan sharks. Caleb is clear. The rest is already in a secure account. You cannot touch it. He was not sorry. He was not conflicted. He was proud. I looked back at Sarah. You wired the full amount? I asked. $650,000, she said, checking her watch. Cash. Cleared 10 minutes ago. Now seriously, get off my porch. I did not move. I let the silence stretch, watching Richard celebrate and Sarah grow impatient. This was the moment. The trap was set. The bait was swallowed. The cage door had just slammed shut. You really should have waited for the title search, I said quietly. Sarah scoffed. I buy distressed properties all the time. I skip red tape to beat the market. I know what I am doing. Do you? I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and pulled out a folded document. It was not a weapon, but it was about to cause more damage than any rifle I had ever carried. Because if you had run a title search, I continued, you would have seen that Richard does not own this house. He has power of attorney. Sarah snapped that she had seen the document herself. She said he had general authority. I corrected her calmly. A general power of attorney allows him to act on behalf of Jordan the individual. But Jordan the individual does not own this property anymore. I unfolded the document and held it up. It was a certified copy of a deed transfer stamped and dated 48 hours before I deployed. I transferred the house into the Jordan Revocable Living Trust 6 months ago. My father is not a trustee. He has no authority over trust assets. He cannot sell what he does not own. I looked past her to Richard, who froze mid-celebration. The receipt in his hand stopped looking like a trophy and started looking like an indictment. That signature on your contract, I said, pointing to Sarah's papers. That is not a sale. That is forgery. And since you wired money across state lines based on fraudulent documents, that is federal wire fraud. Sarah ripped the paper from my hand and scanned the legal text, the dates, the trust seal. The color drained from her face so fast she nearly staggered. The deed she had just paid over $500,000 for was worthless. You, she whispered, staring at Richard. You said you had full authority. I do, Richard shouted, rushing toward the door. I have the power of attorney. Read the fine print, Dad, I said coldly. It covers medical decisions and personal accounts. It does not cover trust assets. You just sold a house you do not own to a woman who just lost $650,000. I turned to Sarah. Her shock transformed instantly into predator rage. Give me my money back, she hissed, turning on Richard. Reverse the wire. Richard stumbled back into the counter. I cannot. What do you mean you cannot? Sarah stormed into the house, her heels cracking against the hardwood like gunshots. Transfer it back now. I already sent the money for Caleb, Richard screamed. It is gone. The loan sharks took it. I cannot get it back. The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah stared at him. Caleb stared at the floor. I watched, feeling the cold satisfaction of a mission completed. They wanted fast cash. They wanted to bypass me. Instead, they walked into a minefield I had laid months ago, and now there was nowhere left to run. Sarah's face twisted with rage and disbelief. The professional mask was gone, replaced by terror. "You wired my money to a criminal enterprise," she said, trembling. "It was a loan," Richard stammered, sweat soaking his collar. "I can get it back. Just give me a few days. We can fix this. Fix this." Sarah laughed sharply. "You do not have days. You committed grand larceny. That money belongs to investors. Do you have any idea what you have done?" She pulled out her phone and dialed emergency services. "I want to report fraud in progress. Significant theft. Yes, the perpetrator is still here." Richard watched her make the call, panic turning into something uglier. Not remorse. Not guilt. Indignation. The rage of a narcissist exposed in public. "You did this," he screamed, pointing at me. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "I did not sign the papers. I did not wire the money. You knew," he shouted. "You let me do it. You stood there and watched. I gave you a choice," I said calmly. "I asked if you wanted to tell the truth. You chose to lie. You chose to double down. You set me up," he roared. But he was not looking at me. He was looking past me at the neighbors gathering outside. That was the real injury. Not prison. Not handcuffs. Humiliation. Exposure. The destruction of his image as the benevolent patriarch. "You wanted to humiliate me," he yelled. "You wanted them to see me like this. You wanted to make your own father look like a criminal." "You are a criminal," I said. "I just turned on the lights. I raised you," he screamed. "I gave you everything. This is how you repay me. By ruining your brother over a house you do not even use." I finally understood. Even facing prison, he could not imagine himself as the villain. My independence felt like betrayal. My survival felt like an attack. "I did not trick you," I said. "I protected myself. If my safety feels like a trap to you, that says everything." Sirens wailed outside. Red and blue lights flooded the room. Sarah gave the dispatcher Richard's name. Caleb sank onto the floor muttering. The rage drained from my father's face as officers entered. "Maria," he pleaded, switching tactics. "You can stop this. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I am your father. You stopped being my father when you treated me like a bank account." The officers cuffed him without resistance. Neighbors watched as the man who ruled this house was led away. I thought it was over until Caleb stepped in front of me. "You think you won," he said, holding up his phone. On the screen was a drafted email to my division's inspector general accusing me of selling stolen military equipment, fake invoices, forged bank transfers. "One accusation like this and your clearance is gone," he whispered. "Drop the charges. Sign the house over." Or I hit send. I did not beg. I laughed. "Go ahead," I said. "Send it." He froze. "My finances are audited monthly," I continued. "Your fake documents do not match federal records. If you send that, you are not exposing me. You are confessing." His phone dropped. Panic replaced arrogance. I raised my hand to the officers. "He is attempting extortion using falsified military documents. I want to press charges." They cuffed him too. He screamed that it was a joke. Intent was enough. As the cruisers pulled away, the weight finally lifted. I was not anyone's shield anymore. I pulled the sold sign from my lawn and threw it into the trash. Inside, the house was empty and quiet. For the first time in years, no one needed saving. I changed the security codes. One clean beep confirmed it. I was not happy yet, but I was safe, and that was enough. If you have ever had to become the villain in someone else's story just to survive, share this.